What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my final thoughts ahead of Game Week 32. So I'm going to start off with the very minimal team news we've had at the time recording. Because it's a Friday deadline, I'm having to record this Thursday evening. Then I'm going to answer a bunch of your questions. And quick warning, there probably is going to be quite a bit of repetitive stuff from earlier videos this week. It's just the kind of week it is because so many people are worried about what chips to play and stuff like that. So you've been warned. Let's get into it. So let's start with the team news. Although we don't have much, there is some quite important stuff about Leeds in particular, who are obviously relevant for Wildcard 32 and obviously the double in 33 as well. So Stack and Rodon are out for Game Week 32 and are likely to not be back until May. So they are just not options whatsoever. Don't put them on your wildcard and hope they'll be back for 33. It sounds like they're going to miss most of April. Biol, Okafor and Goodmanson are all doubts for Game Week 32. Farker said if the game was tomorrow, i.e. Friday, they wouldn't be available. So there is some chance they'll be fine because in Game Week 32 they don't play until Monday against Man United. And if there is a chance they can make that game, they'll probably be okay for 33. But I don't know why you would take the risk. So if you're looking to go for a defender on wildcard in 32, I would probably just go for Struijk at this point. There's obviously a discussion to be had about whether it's even worth going for Leeds defenders if they're missing so many players. But I think because of the double in 33 and Burnley at home in 35, I would still do it if I was on wildcard. So Struijk would be the one. Fulham, Tete and Kevin are both out. I'm sure that affects about 2 people watching this. Arsenal, this is not team news from Arteta. His press conference won't be until Friday. But a guy I follow on Twitter, Cunha, has said that Odegaard, Saka, Timber, Calafiori and Nketiah have not been spotted in training. And we know that obviously Timber and Saka, who are probably the most relevant for FPL, although maybe not even Saka these days, Timber wasn't in the Champions League squad midweek either. So if you're a Timber owner, you're wondering what to do. Obviously wait and see what Arteta says, but I suspect he's going to be a doubt going into 32 and it's City away in 33. So depending on your strategy, Timber might just be a sell. Like if you're looking to free hit 33, wildcard 35, for example, and Timber's likely to miss 32, okay, he could still be okay for 34. But if you need a defender this week and it would make sense for your team to sell him, I think that's okay. Doesn't mean you have to if you can just bench him, but it's just worth considering if he's a doubt for 32. And then for Chelsea, I suspect no one's really looking at Enzo Fernandez. But there was a tweet from Fabrizio Romano, and Enzo's agent basically said, we're on the same page with Chelsea. We made peace yesterday. So we can see what Rossinia says. Presumably Enzo will still miss Game Week 32, because that's what came out, that he was going to miss 2 games, one being the FA Cup. So in theory, Enzo should be fine for Game Week 33. And given that Chelsea is still trying to get top 5 for Champions League, I'll be very surprised if he doesn't just go straight back into the team. So for those of you looking to go 15 double game weekers on 33, maybe Enzo Fernandez is an option. But I suspect for most people, you just keep Bruno Fernandes and that's about it. There wasn't much other team news, really. Obviously, a lot of it will just come out on Friday. Anything important that comes out in the press conferences on Friday itself, I will cover in the deadline stream later. So let's get into some of your questions. For those people with all chips left, is it best to wildcard this week? I think broadly, yes, because it means you get to use your bench boost and triple captain in a double game week. So you wildcard this week, you bench boost 33, you free hit 34, and then you use your triple captain in game week 36, which is likely to be a double for Man City and Crystal Palace. It's not 100% guaranteed, but it's the most likely time that game is going to get played. And if it does, Man City's fixtures will be Brentford at home, Palace at home. That's perfect triple captain for like a Haaland or a Semenyo, someone like that. If the league is over at that point, maybe there's some rotation, but it's your best bet at a triple captain. The only scenarios where I think maybe you wouldn't wildcard this week is if you're somehow in a position where you could bench boost in 32, therefore maybe free hit 33, wildcard 35, and then triple captain 36 because your bench boost is already out of the way. And there might be some specific teams out there where variations of slightly different strategy can work. But ultimately, the broad advice, I suppose, with everyone or for people that have got every chip left, is to wildcard this week so you've got the 2 double game week spare for your bench boost and your triple captain. So for those of us that pulled the trigger too early on wildcard 32 and are now regretting it, is setting our teams up for game week 32 and 33 with free hit 33 in between a credible option? The doublers on bench boost 33 don't look great anyway. Yes, it's viable. You can absolutely make a good 32 team, which will also be really good in 34, and obviously free hit 33 gives you the best, on paper at least, 11 for the double. So you can set yourself up pretty nicely for the rest of the season. You don't have to drop Gordon, you don't have to drop Arsenal players, etc. The problem is if you've got your bench boost left, you're then bench boosting in 35 or 36. And if you're wildcarding this week, that's quite a big gap in between. Now, I know some people are thinking about wildcard 33, bench boost 35, and the gap there is a little bit closer. But to go 32 to 35 or 32 to 36, that's many weeks where stuff can go wrong. I just don't particularly like it. And you say in the question the doublers on bench boost 33 don't look that great. I think they're pretty good. I think people are underestimating how good the bench boost is in 33. I know people have concerns, valid concerns, that the game week 32 team doesn't look as good as it could for a wildcard team. But I don't think there's any doubting that 33 is the best week for bench boost. Now, you can also argue it's the best week for wildcard and free hit as well, but the bench will not look better in any other week. Like, you can set it up, especially if you've got multiple transfers, with Bruno Fernandes, who's always a pretty good pick, even with Chelsea away, and 3 double game week players. Or if you wanted to keep Gabriel, you can have Gabriel and Bruno as the single game weekers and 2 double game weekers. You're not going to get a better bench for the rest of the season. So in my opinion, even if you think you've made a mistake by activating too soon, hoping that Arsenal would obviously beat Southampton, don't make another mistake by now switching strategy just because you don't think the bench in 33 is very good. Because I'm telling you now, it won't be any better. There might be a game week later on, like 35, 36, 37, etc., where the bench does perform better. But without that hindsight, on paper, 33 is the best. So I think in this case, you've got to try and get over what the game week 32 team looks like and set up for that bench boost. But is it a viable strategy to go the way you're saying? Absolutely. So can you show us a free hit 34 draft so we can compare it to our current teams? And I definitely think this is worth doing if you're stuck between wildcard 32 and free hit 33, because if you do free hit in 33, you've got to manage 32 and 34 with free transfers before a lot of you would then wildcard in 35. So it's nice to see how your team would stack up. This is the draft I've come up with, bearing in mind we're still a few weeks away from game week 34, so things might change. And before you put comments down below talking about Salah and Saka in particular, I know they're controversial picks. There's a reason that I've put them in this team. Let me come on to that in a second. So if everybody was fully fit for game week 34, bearing in mind there's no Chelsea, no Man City because they're blanking that week, and Arsenal have got Newcastle at home, Liverpool have got Palace at home, and Man United have got Brentford at home, this is the kind of team that I would build. So Mamadashvili is against Crystal Palace at home. Really cheap goalkeeper. If Alisson's back, you can go for Roofs from Sunderland against Forest at home. Maybe Hermansen if you want someone cheap for West Ham against Everton at home. But right now, Alisson's out. Mamadashvili's playing, so that's who I've gone for. In defence, Gabriel, no-brainer pick. I've also gone for Timber. Timber at the moment, at least at the time recording, is a doubt going into 32. Probably be back for 34. If not, you can switch to a different Arsenal defender like Saliba. Van Dijk Palace at home and Tarkowski West Ham away. So for this particular draft, I've gone 4-5-1, and I'll come on to the forwards in a second. In midfield, Salah Palace at home, Saka Newcastle at home, Fernandes and Cunha against Brentford at home, and then Harry Wilson as a slightly cheaper option against Villa at home, and then Jarrod Bowen against Everton at home. I think that looks pretty good. On the forwards, I don't think game week 34 is great for them. Like Brobby against Forest at home, you could look at. Jimenez against Villa at home, sorry. I probably wouldn't go for Watkins away to Fulham, just doesn't seem that exciting. Maybe Ekitike, but what if Isak's fit at that point? They could share minutes between each other. Beto against West Ham away. You know, Solanke, Richarlison against Wolves away. They're just not great picks. Maybe Gyökeres instead of Saka, right? Forwards, not brilliant, I would say, for 34. Now, if this was a season or two ago, where Salah and Saka are great picks, I think that free hit team looks really nice. But the reality is, You can't trust Salah's minutes right now. And Saka, will he be fit by game week 34? And if he is, he probably starts against Newcastle at home. I don't think there's too many doubts about that. But Madueke could eat into his minutes as well. So in theory, this team looks great on paper. But if Salah and Saka are not picks and you have to go somewhere else, all of a sudden, that draft doesn't look quite so exciting to me. Because you're having to find two different attackers. So maybe you're going for a punt on Isak. Maybe you're going for Ekitike. And if you look at the other midfielders that you'd have to choose from, like Gibbs White away to Sunderland, Enzo Lefebvre home to Forest, not great. Somerville, if he's back fit against Everton, maybe an Njai against West Ham away could be okay. But none of these picks are all that interesting, I don't think. So because you've got no Haaland, no Palmer, and maybe Salah and Saka aren't picks, you haven't got many premiums to pick from. Now, you don't have to spend all your budget. The point I'm trying to make is, in theory, the team looks quite nice on paper, but I don't think by the time we get to 34, Saka and Salah would necessarily be in this team. So when I compare it to my team that I would have in 34 if I spend one transfer in 32, I don't think it's that much better. I've got Thiago up front against Man United away. I don't really mind that for 1 week. Ekitike Palace at home, Bowen Everton at home, who's in the free hit team. I've got Fernandes and Mbeumo instead of Fernandes and Cunha. I've got Wilson. And then I've got Elliot Anderson instead of... Well, I've got Ekitike and Anderson instead of Salah and Saka, which is maybe okay this season. Which sounds so stupid, but that is just the season we're having. And then defence, I've got Van Dijk, Gabriel, Raya, and then Joachim Anderson. Like, I think that compares quite well. So maybe I don't even need a free hit. It's honestly, I've said honestly twice there. I'm going round and round in circles with this chip stuff. Both. So for the main two, free hit 33, wildcard 32, they can just both work. Whichever way you want to frame it, it's fine to go that way. If you think your 34 team stacks up pretty nicely against free hit 34 and therefore you want a free hit 33, you don't care about the bench boost in 33, that's absolutely fine. Like I said, this free hit 34 draft will not be the final one people go for in 34. It'll probably not be my final draft either if I end up going for this strategy. But it's going to be somewhere close to that, I would say, given the teams that we've got to choose from. Either strategy works, honestly. So if you're on the free hit 33, wildcard 35 strategy, how many free transfers should we look to have going into wildcard 35? Would it be okay to have no keeper in game week 34, for example? Or should we use transfers to improve the players we have in game week 34? And although game week 34 is a couple of weeks away, this is worth thinking about now because it might impact how you use your transfers in game week 32. Now, the obvious cliche answer is you should have as many transfers as possible going into wildcard 35 because although you've got a wildcard, there could still be stuff that happens afterwards where you need those moves. Injuries, suspensions, rotation, and stuff like that. But ultimately, there are still points to be gained before you wildcard. So if I had a free transfer and I was down to 10 players, no goalkeeper, yes, I would absolutely use a transfer to get a goalkeeper in. Likewise, I might use transfers to improve the players I've got. So let's say, as an example, you've got Lacroix against Liverpool away and you're forced to play him in 34 and you haven't got triple Arsenal. Would I use a transfer to make sure I've got an Arsenal defender instead of a Palace one? Potentially. So I think you can use transfers before 35. You don't have to have 2, 3, 4, 5 saved up before you hit that wildcard button. It's also worth saying when you wildcard in 35, you've only got 4 weeks left. So you're going to be in a position where you can best set up for the rest of the season, get your Palace double game week players in, make sure you've got your City ones, probably have Arsenal players, maybe Gordon, possibly a defender from Newcastle, and then you should be able to roll a transfer or two anyway. Obviously, there is stuff that could come up, but if you're wildcarding with 4 weeks left, you're probably not going to need a massive amount of transfers. Maybe if you're bench boosting to redistribute funds, but I don't think it's going to be a huge issue, to be honest with you. So, yes, it's nice to have transfers going into wildcard 35 for after game week 35 itself, but I wouldn't stress about it too much, and I would still be trying to get points in 32, in 33, and 34. So, which Bournemouth defender is better to include on wildcard 32, Truffert or Hill? I think I would basically go for the defensive contribution defender. That's pretty much worked for most of this season. Like, Truffert's not terrible for DEFCONs. He's averaging 8.23 per start. You've got to hit 10 as a defender. But Hill is averaging 11. So he's hitting those +2 points way more often, and his attacking threat's not that bad either. And he's cheaper at 4.2 million. Now, I know what everyone's thinking right now. There's a lot of money to go around. It's not all that tight in terms of wildcard drafts and stuff like that, but you never know when you might need that money. So you save 0.5 million. You've got a nailed-on defender in that Bournemouth backline, and he's great for DEFCONs. I think Hill is the one. There's also an argument potentially to be made where Hill is just the best pick regardless. I know Senesi has been better defensive contribution per start on average this season, but Senesi, interestingly, is out of contract in the summer. And if he doesn't sign a new contract, he's probably leaving. So if Bournemouth get themselves into a position where they've got nothing to play for, Hill might keep playing because he's going to be at the club most likely next year, whereas Senesi might not. I think, by the way, that is probably not worth overthinking right now. If you're going double Bournemouth defence on wildcard, for example, I would choose Senesi and Hill. But there is an argument to be made that Hill should be the number one. I still prefer Senesi, but I just wanted to quickly add that in. So you said earlier this week that you wouldn't consider buying Mbeumo at the moment. Is this still valid if you're on a free hit 33 wildcard 35 strategy? I'm looking for an Enzo replacement for 32 and 34. I had a very similar question to this earlier on in the week, apart from someone was looking at Cunha as an Enzo replacement. Look, it's a fair call out. If you're wildcarding in 35 and you only need someone for 32 and 34, Man United are one of the best teams to look at. Leeds at home 32, Brentford at home 34, especially when you might not be trusting players like Salah, right? So you'd have to look at Szoboszlai from Liverpool or Rice from Arsenal instead of Saka, etc. And I think in those cases, I probably do prefer a Man United midfielder alongside Bruno. Given how Mbeumo and Cunha have been performing recently and the minutes, I think there's an argument to be made that Cunha is the better pick between the two, and he's a little bit cheaper at 8 million, so for some of you that might be easier to fit in. But actually, when you look at the underlying numbers for the season, Mbeumo has just been better, and he's more likely to take some set pieces as well. So Mbeumo's running at 0.32 non-penalty expected goals per 90, Cunha's at 0.24. And creativity-wise, Mbeumo's 0.18 expected assists, 0.11 expected assists for Cunha. So if they were going to play the same minutes for the rest of the... Or let's just say for game weeks 32 and 34, I think you'd have to say Mbeumo's the slightly better pick because, yes, Cunha might be in better form over recent games, but that can change quite quickly. And I think... I mean, we'll have to wait and see what Carrick says in his press conference. Dorgu might be back soon. How will that impact Cunha? I still have the viewpoint that Mbeumo is the second most nailed on Man United attacker behind Bruno Fernandes. Is it possible that he gets benched, Ahmad plays, Cunha on the left, Šeško through the middle? Yes, but we've not seen that yet. So despite him getting subbed early, he continues to start. And I think that will continue moving forward. So based on recent games, I think you can make an argument Cunha's better. But I do try where possible. It's not always easy, but I do try where possible to not worry too much about form. And if I'm basing it on underlying numbers so far this season, Mbeumo's still a pretty good pick. I actually don't think a triple up is crazy. Fernandes, Mbeumo, and Cunha. So yeah, I'm going to say if I had to buy one of these two players, I'm going to stick to Mbeumo, even though I think Cunha is pretty nice. So with Wildcard 32, Bench Boost 33 in mind, is it worth keeping Gabriel? It would give me a better 32 team, save a transfer down the line, and hold the value I have in him. This is definitely something that I'm kind of coming around to. I don't like having him against Man City away in Game Week 33 for the bench boost. But if Arsenal aren't rotating when you get to Game Week 35, you are going to want some of their players. Like Fulham at home in 35, West Ham away in 36, Burnley at home in 37. So maybe sacrificing a double Game Week defender and having Gabriel instead is absolutely fine. The only thing to mention, and obviously there would be some risk with this because Gabriel is the best defender in FPL this season, you don't necessarily need him straight away depending on how you set your team up on Wildcard 32. So what I mean by that is a lot of people will go for Darlow and a Leeds defender, right? So they'll double up on Leeds defence. And in Game Week 35, they've got Burnley at home. And if you go for double Bournemouth defence, for example, like Senesi and Hill, they've got Palace at home that week. Now, absolutely, I'd rather have Gabriel, but you'd have 4 defenders from Bournemouth and Leeds, and they'd have Burnley at home and Palace at home. It's not the end of the world if you play those 4 and don't have Gabriel until later on. Then you look at game week 36, where Gabriel's got West Ham away. Again, really good pick. Please, like, don't take this as me saying you don't need Gabriel. He's still amazing, right? I would love him for this. But maybe if you get lucky, you could get away with it. So game week 36, a lot of people are going to have Verbruggen and Van Heck, right? They've got Wolves at home. So if you're playing a back three and obviously a goalkeeper, that covers 2 of your 4 positions. And bear in mind, if Man City and Palace end up doubling in 36, you're definitely going to want to play Nico O'Reilly. Like this, sorry, let me just find him here. Hardly anyone is going to wildcard without this guy. So he'd have Brentford at home, Palace at home, if that double goes into 36. So that's 3 of your 4 covered. And then presumably, if Palace do end up doubling, you might want to bring a Palace defender in for Everton at home, Man City away. So then you're at game week 37. You've only got 2 game weeks of the season left. Now, if Gabriel plays Burnley at home in 37, obviously that's amazing. Maybe you get him in that week. So absolutely, it's viable just to start with him. You save the value, and depending on what your team value is, it might be difficult to get him back later. Bournemouth at home is a pretty good fixture for him, and you don't have to worry about 35 onwards. But there are scenarios, if you get away with game week 32 and have a doubler, like where you don't get punished by Gabriel, and then you have a doubler in 33, which is better. You free hit in 34, so that week doesn't matter. Could you get away without him for a couple more weeks after wildcard? Potentially. I also think, and I've said this a few times this week, the more transfers you've got going into 32, the more reason I think there is to take him on for a couple of weeks. So I've only got 2 free transfers, and as you know, if you've watched the videos, I'm struggling with how many single game weekers to start with. If I had 4 or 5, I'd be very tempted to start with Gabriel, sell him in 33 to a doubler, and then get him back as soon as I can, 35 onwards. But I do think if you're on double Bournemouth, double Brighton, double Leeds defence, including goalkeepers, bearing in mind the possible double for City and Palace in 36, you might be able to get away 35, 36 without massively needing Gabriel. And also one other thing, and this is not a reason to not buy him, but it is playing on my mind a little bit. If you only own Gabriel from Arsenal or from Arsenal's defence, you need them to concede because of how high the ownership is. And that kind of sucks. Now, obviously, if Gabriel goes and smashes a few goals as he's capable of, then you want him regardless. But you're going to be sat there wishing the clean sheet goes every week, which just kind of sucks for FPL. I do think for FPL, it's much better if you don't know what effective ownership is. Unfortunately, I do. And I know that if I've got Gabriel and that's the only one, I need the Arsenal clean sheet to be wiped out. And I'm just relying on attack and returns. So could I just take him on for a few weeks? Maybe. The problem is he can massively punish. And I was fortunately on the right side of this back in, when did I buy him? Oh yeah, game week 19 against Villa. He got 15, 9 and 6 points in a row. Then 8, then 1, then 8, then 6. Like he's been, so, like even the last 3, 9, 11, 9. It is so hard to go without him. Yes, it's worth keeping Gabriel, I think. Will I definitely do it? Not so sure right now. So I'm going to run through some final thoughts on my own team heading into today's deadline. I'm going to try and do it as quickly as possible because honestly, I'm still not really sure what I want to do. And I am at least only between 2 options. The problem is both options are viable and it feels like such a huge decision. I'm still not quite sure which way to go. I know some people out there think I'm lying and that my wildcard is already active. I can promise you it's not. This is my team on the transfer page, and you can see that the wildcard and free hit buttons still say play, i.e. they are not active. Now, I am recording this on Thursday evening, so maybe before the night is out, I might hit the wildcard button, but I doubt it. I'm probably just going to wait until the press conferences are done, then make a decision. Is there anything in the press conferences that could change my mind either way? Probably not, but you never know. So as it stands, this is my team. Raya, Van Dijk, Gabriel, Munoz, Mbeumo, Fernandes captain, that will not change. Gordon, Harry Wilson, Elliot Anderson, Ekitike, Thiago. If I don't wildcard, I think my most likely option is to use one of my 2 free transfers to do Guiu to Bowen, and then the team would look like this. I would basically bench Harry Wilson. I would then free hit 33 and then manage my team for 34 before wildcarding in game week 35. The alternative option is just a wildcard. This is the draft that I'm currently looking at. So Gabriel in defence and João Pedro up front instead of Senesi in defence and Thiago up front. which is what I had in my team selection video. So not really a massive change. It basically means João Pedro is already there for the double in 33, and Gabriel is in as a better option than Senesi for game week 32. Would I then sell Gabriel in 33? I think it gives me the option to do it. I think if I go Thiago, I'm definitely going to want... I could go for Bowen or Thiago, by the way. Whichever one I go for, I think I would definitely want to sell to João Pedro. Whereas with Gabriel, I might get to 33 and just decide to keep him. Because as I talked about in the question earlier, he is just quite a nice option from 35 onwards, and it would save me a transfer. It just feels bad to have 2 single game weekers on my bench boost, but I don't think I've ever had a full set of double game weekers on a bench boost, and it's always gone relatively okay. So I would still have I basically still have a Bruggen and Van Heck and Fernandes, which is going to happen anyway. It's just Gabriel instead of Struijk. So Struijk would be in the 11, and I just wouldn't have a second Bournemouth defender. I think it's kind of okay. Gabriel is the one that I'm really struggling to go without. Because I think if Arsenal have still got stuff to play for in the league by the time you get to 35, 36, you're going to want him if possible. Yes, you might get away with it, but you also might not. This is the best defender in FPL. So that's the wildcard team I'm looking at. And obviously then I'd have 13 double game weeks in the 33 and I would bench boost. Right now, I'm still leaning towards wildcarding. And I'm not trying to draw this out. I really just don't know what to do. And I've said this already this week. Every time I start thinking this is the best strategy, and I go close to like telling myself it's locked in, I then start thinking about the other one. So I look at this and think, you know what? It's not that bad. I can sell Gabriel in 33 if I want to. And then I've got a really good bench boost. That's great. But then I look at the 32 team versus what it could be without wildcard and think, why am I wildcarding? And then I just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I think I will end up bench boosting and wildcarding purely because I feel like, and I've got to keep saying it's not a literal guarantee, but it kind of guarantees a boost straight away. I know what I'm getting with it. Whereas wildcard 35, it may be really good. It might not. At least if I wildcard this week, I know I'm doing it for a specific reason, and that is the bench in 33. And I know that bench boost in 33 will be the best bench boost for the rest of the season, at least on paper. So I think I will end up wildcarding, and I think it'll be a draft very similar to this. I mean, could it be Mitoma instead of Gross? Sure. Could I start with Thiago or Bowen, then switch to João Pedro, or just go without João Pedro? Maybe. But I think most of this team, for Bruggen, Van Heck, O'Reilly, Fernandes, Palmer, Semenyo, Haaland, Calvert-Lewin, Darlow, Tavernier, and a Bournemouth defender and a Leeds defender are pretty much locked in. The draft, to be honest, almost picks itself. Do I wish Arsenal had beaten Southampton to make my life easier? Yes, but that didn't happen, so be it. Anyway, that's just under 5 minutes for my team. Probably not as quick as it should have been. Whatever, it's done now. Make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you at 4:30 PM UK time for the deadline stream. And then hopefully by then I'll know whether I'm wildcarding or not. Probably not. I'll have the draft ready to go basically on the stream so I can activate it whenever I need to, if I want to. I'll see you then.